Hey everyone, welcome to Pilot to Co-Pilot, a leadership podcast with me, Antonio Neves, and Jason Lindstrom. Today we are lucky enough to be joined by two incredible guests. First and foremost, we have Robbie Young, Vice President of Strategic Growth at cuinsight.com. And we have Laura Briggs, Vice President of Training and Development at Evergreen Credit Union. Now, today we're talking about something leaders often overlook until it hits hard: mental health in the workplace. Because here's the truth: you don't have to be okay to lead powerfully. Grief shows up even when no one talks about it. And emotional strength isn't about bottling things up. It's about building presence, creating space, and leading while human. So this episode right here is for anyone who's ever thought, what the heck is going on with me? Do I really have to hold it all together? Is it okay not to be okay at work? All these questions and more. And before we get into it, we want to be clear, this is just a conversation. None of us are experts. We're just sharing our experiences. So if you are listening to this, or you or someone you know needs support, definitely find professionals locally to your region and area. But let's get started right here. Jason, I want to start with you as the CEO of an organization. It's 2025. When we talk about mental health in the workplace, what does that look like? And I asked that question because I remember a time beginning my career when you didn't say those two words in the workplace. You separated church and state. Whatever challenges you were having at home or in life, you didn't bring that to the office. So how do you see mental health in 2025 in the workplace?
I think at this point in 2025, it affects everyone. Even if you say yourself as a leader or as an employee of an organization, I think when you talk about the terms mental health, it does affect us all. Whether you may not have anything going on in one day, but the next day you're really broken down because of something that's happened. And I think that affects all of us, from leadership, like I said, all the way down to, frontline type employees. And what I see in my organization and what I hear from other leaders across the country, who are CEOs or who are senior leaders, is that the mental health challenges in every workplace are there. And it does affect the work environment to the point where productivity is lost, at the workplace, but also, when you see some of the workplace violence that goes on as a result of mental health issues and challenges. So I think we have to be mindful of how you talk to your employees, how you lead, and how you listen. We've talked about this before: being vulnerable, listening, being a leader that, listens and, offer different opportunities and things when you do have issues in the workplace around mental health.
Robbie, what's your perspective on this? I know lately you've been speaking quite a bit on this topic, virtually and in-person events. So not only, I'm sure, do you have personal experiences with mental health in the workplace, but also the people that you've engaged with and you talk to in your talk. So what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I certainly have some personal experiences when it comes to this, but for me, it's about being human, being transparent, and being very authentic. The reality is, when we say the word mental health, we mean the same thing we mean when we say physical health. It's constantly happening. It's constantly changing. It goes minute by minute. That could change at any time. So the importance is realizing that mental health means the same thing as physical health.
That's a really good reminder that I haven't even considered until this moment. And Laura, you're in a unique position, leading up training and development at a large credit union. So when we talk about development these days in 2025, does that include mental health?
Absolutely. And Robbie, I love that you likened it to physical health. And I think the really cool thing, the positive thing about us talking mental health in 2025 is it's becoming less and less taboo to talk about it, right? If you are looking to get the most out of your team, or your team's looking to get the most out of you, this is where we spend a majority of our time, right? Is at work and amongst each other. So by showing up and having that supportive space, you're going to get so much more out of your teams by acknowledging that, hey, we're not all perfect. We're not all robots that come in and can compartmentalize and move on with our lives. We need to have that grace.
Robbie, I'm going to come to you, and I'm curious. We're going to go on a variety of topics right here, but I want to start with you from your perspective. When we don't talk about what we're struggling with at work, what happens in that environment? Do you think not only for the individual, but also for the team? Because of course, at some point, everyone's going through something. There could be a deep loss they're experiencing. There could be a divorce taking place. There could be challenges with a young child. They're taking care of older parents, things that are maybe normal, but still challenges. So when we don't talk about what we're struggling with at work, what are the ramifications of that?
Yeah, the reality is when we don't talk about these things, we're being dishonest with ourselves and with our teams. I've said this in my talks. I experienced the loss of my little brother to suicide. And even after, the set aside bereavement that's written in every policy and things like that, when I turned on my Zoom calls, when I got back into the office from that loss, I didn't all of a sudden stop being a grieving sister. I didn't stop being a mother who had just lost a brother. There's a lot of things at play there, and it's not to say that we can't still be very successful in those moments, but without being able to lean on our teams for the real things that we're actually experiencing, we're creating cultures where people can't bring their full selves and really thrive in the work that they're doing.
Yeah, Jason, I'm curious for you, when you think about your career and your arc, and when nowadays people are talking more about whatever challenges they may be experiencing in their lives. I know there was probably a period in your career when it was a little bit taboo. I'm curious for you, what's your perspective? How do you respond when someone else shows up, maybe with some challenging issues in a professional setting?
I think the biggest thing for me is to sit down and listen, have the patience and the wherewithal to, console someone if they're going through something, and Laura and I have a personal interaction, and I'll just talk about how she came in one day crying, full of tears, right? Just the anxiety was just over the top for her. And as someone that's grown up, I've been anxious about different things for sure, but I don't know what that true day-to-day struggle is with anxiety for someone. I'm a public speaker. As you know, Antonio, it takes a lot to get in front of an audience and do all that. I've just, over my time in my career, I'm comfortable being in front of an audience, but I still get those goosebumps and the butterflies and everything else that happens when I go in front of a group, even if it's a small group. But I don't know what it's like on a day-to-day basis. And so I asked Laura point blank. I just said, "Hey, Laura, I want to feel for you. I understand that you're going through something, but what is anxiety to you? How is it? And how does this affect you in such a way?" And I'm speaking for you, Laura, and I'm going to let you speak after me.
That's okay. I'll correct you after.
Yeah. But I think it was, that mindset, just to listen and hear her out, first of all, but also care about Laura as an employee, as a person coming to me and, broken down in tears because of whatever was going on. And it may not have been work related. It may have been personal related, but as a leader, you have to listen. You have to give that team member, your employee, your friend, your colleague, your coworker, the opportunity to tell you what's going on. And I didn't try to solve anything for Laura that day. I tried to just put her into knowing she had a safe space and that I would listen and not going to suggest something, but maybe offer, whatever I can do to help. And I think that's so important for leaders that going through the whole COVID thing, I had so many employees that were relying on me for answers. And we've talked about this before, where I had to learn about, this virus. I had to learn about what it was. There were deaths that had happened with, employees' mother, a board member we lost to COVID. And so being able to talk about these things in a a personal context and really learn about it, it goes the same with mental health and other challenges that come up with the team.
Laura, I want to hear your perspective, and I'm curious. First, what allowed you to have trust to go to Jason? So when we think about being that type of leader, colleague that actually creates space for that person to trust them enough to go there with something tough or vulnerable, what did Jason provide, and what allowed you to say, you know what, even at work, I'm willing to share this part of me?
Well, the first things first, Jason and I have known each other a long time, and there's a lot of loyalty on my end in that respect. And that is because of how Jason has shown up for me, both professionally, absolutely, but also personally as well. So, it's nice of you, Jason, that you only said there was one time Laura came into my office crying. I know there's been many times that I've come in crying. But it's because that, Jason may say he doesn't understand anxiety or, he'll say he's not very emotional. But my experience in that is Jason has shown me vulnerability throughout the time of knowing each other, in little micro ways. He's included me in his life. He's shared things with me that you wouldn't necessarily get if you're just sitting in a meeting and going through the motions. That allowed me to kind of, that psychological safety, right? Those are the buzzwords that everybody brings about. That's something that Jason really cultivated within our relationship. So when it got to the point where I am, really emotional or I'm really upset, going to him and knowing that he's not going to try and make me change, he's going to let me sit in these feelings, he's going to listen. Sometimes that space is all I needed to get through whatever it was that I was struggling with, is there somebody there that remembers what I'm like when I'm not in this, feeling this right now, that I'm not going through this. He knows the Laura outside of those tears. He knows I'm going to get back to it. But for right now, I need to have that space with him.
And I'll open that a little. Is important. I was just going to add that I think it was important too that the next day I came into Laura's office and I checked in on her too, right? How you doing today? Oh, I'm much better. Thanks. Those kind of things. I did want to preface too, like Laura's a hugger, Tony.
Yeah. I'm the hugger that he's been talking about.
That's credit unions.
Right.
That is credit unions.
And,
Yes.
and I'm not a hugger. Maybe that's my own anxieties, right? Of like, oh gosh, do we hug all of that? So
Yeah, it's hilarious. Well, let's move on. I want to go this direction. And Robbie, I want to come to you. And Robbie and I have been friends for a while. We've shared some conversations. And I'm curious from your perspective, Robbie, when we share in public settings about what we're going through, whether it's one-on-ones or say it's at a training or at a conference, and we say certain things out loud of what we're experiencing. Right? As you mentioned, you experienced the death of a little brother, and again, other people are going through so many different things. What happens when we say these things out loud? Have you found that it creates connectivity and allows other people to share things they otherwise would not share?
Yeah, honestly, it's really amazing, both from the person being able to say it out loud, but also the people who haven't said it out loud yet feeling seen. I joke all the time about being an extrovert, which I'm sure if you follow me even briefly on LinkedIn, no one's probably surprised to see that, especially if you've ever met me in person. But the reality is I say a lot that I am willing to be the loudest person in the room until someone feels comfortable enough to speak up. Now, that's not saying that you have to share more than you feel comfortable, but just saying, even if it's in a training, hey guys, you got me at about 75% today. I'm having a hard time. Help me help you. I will, be able to bring my full self on another date, but I promise I'm here and I want to work through this. It really creates cultures of people that feel like they can truly be authentic. And in this past year, that's really been an effort of mine, is to be my more authentic self. And it has far and away created more relationships, more meaningful conversations than I maybe have ever had in my 10 years of working in this career.
Yeah, and just quick follow up on that. When you're willing to say those things out loud that typically we hold inside, what has that done for you? Like, I think about when I've had those experiences, I feel lighter. Like I'm walking on clouds a little bit. Like the mask, if you will, has come off to a certain extent. Would you agree with that?
There's a lot of times that when I started this, effort to being more authentic and kind of dusting off the things I thought meant to be a professional, I was scared. And I have ADHD and anxiety and all those things. So I go back into my hotel at night and I go, oh, Robbie, maybe everyone didn't need to know that. But the reality is that when those conversations come afterwards, where someone approaches me and they're like, thank you so much for your honesty, or thank you for the things that you share. I've been really feeling that. The reality is it does fill my cup, and it's become easier and easier to be that true, authentic leader that I dream to be. Just from that like service mentality of making other people feel like they can take a breath and feel seen for a minute. And even if it's just a minute, that will lead to more of those minutes in their life.
I mean, that's what a powerful point, even if it's just a minute, right? We're not talking about like everything. It's like, even if it's just a minute. And hearing you say, like, just sharing out loud, hey, I'm only 75% there today. What a breath of fresh air that we're typically unwilling to say. And I think that's a byproduct, one of, individual strength and maturity, but also from a culture perspective. And Laura, I'm curious from your perspective. I've had the opportunity, thankfully, and awesomely to work with Evergreen. And one thing that I found super revealing in doing a workshop with you and your team were some of the things people stood up and said out loud. I was blown away of some of the vulnerable, I won't share them here, but some of the vulnerable things that people said that I don't know, they said them out loud, but something about the environment you and Jason have created there allowed them to share these things publicly. So my question is, what kind of culture, or how do you build a culture that provides a safe space for people to speak up like that?
I mean, Robbie's already kind of led us there too, which is great, is if I'm showing up as my authentic self, and I have a similar thing, Robbie, where I joke with my new hires. I'm like, it's 3:00. I'm mush mouth now. So whenever I'm going to mix up words, my mind, it's checked out. I'm here and we're going to finish, but forgive me if I stumble over my words. And, they sometimes are newer folks where this might be their first job. They're looking at a VP and hearing, oh, I'm not at 100%, or I might stumble this, or this is something new to me. So give me some kind of leeway here. That's kind of a deep breath that they can take and go, oh, I don't have to be so rigid. I can show up as myself. And then you see they come in the next day and they're a different person. They've really blossomed because they realize, hey, if this person can stumble and be maybe a little off, right? I hate using that term, but they're not this polished button up, executive that I'm expecting. That means I can kind of be silly and I can open myself up and share some of that as well. So I really just think, being vulnerable is contagious. And if you are strong enough to stand up and say, this is something that maybe somebody might be really uncomfortable saying, I guarantee you there's one, if not multiple people in the room that have experienced that too. And they're taking a deep breath now because somebody's acknowledged it. Somebody's sharing it.
Yeah, I love hearing being vulnerable is contagious. And Jason, you're interesting in that you may be one of the rare CEOs that say, I have an open door policy. And you actually
mean it and mean it.
And actually mean it. And also, something we've communicated a lot about is how you stay up to date, even when you're on vacation. Like, you're making sure if anyone in your team needs anything via email or phone calls or anything urgent, you are available in a unique way. And I want to say you're one of the unique leaders I've met over the years, Jason, and I've interviewed every type of man and woman leader you can think of. I don't see a lot of ego. And I'm curious, when you look at from an ego perspective in the workplace, how that allows people to feel comfortable to actually go to the CEO or email the CEO. When I say ego, it's interesting too, because I think you can simultaneously be a boss, be the CEO, running things, handling your business, while simultaneously being humble and not having all this ego shining. And that's actually rare. So I don't even know what my question is, Jason, but I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I think I do understand it. And I'll tag what Laura said about not being on or whatever and allowing her, trainees to go home early, essentially, because it's their first day. It's the first class of training or whatever. And I support the decisions that she makes on that. I've heard of leaders and I've seen like well, they're not there for the 8 hours. We're going to cut their pay for, the hour and a half that you let them go early. And if I was that type of leader, we would not have such a great culture, because we've talked about this many times. Everybody at the credit union is over 18. Everybody at the credit union then is an adult. Everybody at the credit union is human. They can make mistakes. They can be tired. They can be overwhelmed that first day of training. I know Laura's training program, there is a lot of information that's covered, all the way from culture to, working the computer systems and that kind of thing. And it could be a lot in a day, and it's a lot to train. It's a lot of knowledge that she has to impart, and it's a lot for brand new employees to understand and grasp. And so I think as a leader, you have to recognize that everyone is an adult, everyone is human. They all have emotions, whether one way or the other. They all, either are poised there, ready to work hard, and there might be somebody that's like, oh, really, we get to end early? I don't know that anybody ever says, like, if your boss comes in and says, hey, you guys can leave early, that they're like, oh, no, wait, I'm going to work for 6 more hours. If the boss...
No, I've got a few people that I'm like, come on, you take the time off, you've earned it. And it's, oh, no, I want to get this done. And that tells me I've really got a really strong employee underneath me, that they recognize I'm giving them that maybe leeway, but they're like, nope, I want to finish something first before I take advantage of that.
I think that's interesting, because what we see with these types of conversations is that is how you build cultures of people that have skin in the game. That's how you build. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, great, people want to work longer, whatever. No, they want to work because the work is meaningful for them. People don't leave roles because the work is too hard. They leave because they don't feel seen inside that work. But by you saying, hey, this is a long day, go ahead and go home, and them saying, you know what, I got a couple of things I really that are important to me and I really want to wrap up. That's because it's truly powerful work to them.
Totally true, Robbie, because we've just created a culture. I look at credit unions, and I just spent a week in Boston with 100 and something credit union CEOs with America's Credit Union CEO Council conference. And what's interesting was, we've talked about this before too, like as a CEO, it's a lonely place, and it can be very lonely at times. And I guess that's part of mental health too, is if you feel lonely. And what was cool about this conference is there's not a lot of vendors there. It's all CEOs, and we all feel the similar kind of thing. But credit unions, it's people helping people, that mantra, that philosophy that we all get behind, and we make a difference in people's lives. And hearing other credit union CEOs from across the country, large and small, have those independent one-on-one conversations and say, hey, what do you do in your shop? What do you do in your shop? Some are just serving teachers. Some have serving entire states or multi-states. And they all have that passion for taking care of people. And so I think I fit in the industry. I've had a long credit union career and done many things in credit unions to understand how the operation works. But I've taken what I didn't like, and now I'm able to put in everything that I did like at these other credit unions and impart that culture of trust, vulnerability, the ability to talk, the open door policy that we talk about. The only time the door is closed is if I'm doing a podcast or something like this, that I have a meeting, right? The rest of
I'm crying in his office.
or if Laura's in crying. But I've had other people, come in and talk, and some, they want to talk about maybe mountain biking, or they want to talk about something, and I'm there for them for that too. They may want to talk about, they just adopted a dog and it's now sick. I'm there for them too. And it's because I view the CEO role as the cheerleader for the organization, the person that sets the tone, the culture for an organization. And I think this can work in the private sector outside of credit unions too. If you have passion for what you do, and that you understand that people are human, to Robbie's point, and that we all have emotions, we all have needs, and that ability to just be there for people. And I've hired like-minded people as well as we built the culture so that other leaders, my COO, our VP of HR, they're also of that same mindset. The open door policy. Hey, come in and we'll talk. Laura gets the open door policy when she doesn't have a training class. I mean, she's got people stopping in on a daily basis for her because they trust her that even though we've had this long-standing relationship, we've made it clear that there's trust between the two of us, that she's a vault and won't tell me things about an employee that has come in unless it's some emergency kind of thing. And so that builds trust. I think people go to her because they're like, oh, you have an ear to Jason. And a lot of times Laura will say, just go talk to him. What are you doing? Like, you don't need me as an intermediary, and go talk to him. But they're newer to the organization. Maybe they're not comfortable. We're constantly working with our team to understand how we communicate, all the different options that we have. Laura does a great training on the different personalities that everyone has, and we'll go to a team and do their whole personality profile. And then it's like, oh, well, that's why that person's like that. This is how I interact with that person because they're different from me and I'm not used to that person. And so it just is a culture of, and I don't like to brag about it, but at the same time, I think that what this culture can offer to others is that it has been successful because we listen and we care about each other as human beings.
Yeah, which is sadly is extremely rare. And for that person listening right now, they may be thinking, oh, maybe that's easy for a smaller credit union. We're talking about a credit union that has hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. So we're not talking about something that can only work in an extremely small size. I want to get tactical just for this last part of this conversation, which is so, man, I'm learning so much and it's just so helpful. And I know people listening to this are getting so much out of it. And Robbie, I'm thinking about that man. I'm thinking about that woman that maybe is going through a tough season in their life right now for whatever reason. What approach do you think they should take to seek out support, whether it's professional support or even just trying to knock on the door of a colleague or someone to share what's going on? Because I know that can be so vulnerable and so scary. So any suggestions for that person that could use some support right now?
Certainly, sometimes it does feel like a hard step forward, but the reality is, without taking that step, you might be hurting yourself in the long run, not only mentally but in your career. And it's not because your leader has meant to say, "Oh, they've gone through something and they're just not their best self." It's because they don't know what you're going through, and unless you invite somebody to, have an understanding of what's really going on, you might see some repercussions from that. What I would say to the person, trying to take that first step is, where is your comfortability? Is that sending a Slack message or a Teams message or a quick email that says, hey, I'm really going through a lot. I would love to discuss this with you, but I'm trying to find the space for me that feels the most comfortable in doing that. And just setting the stage to maybe be asked a question or maybe be given space that you need. My favorite thing to say as a leader is, how can I be helpful? And it's really, I'm a doer and I have a little bit of a harder time at just like listening and whatever. But when I say, how can I be helpful? It really allows for the person to tell me, hey, you could be helpful by not asking me any questions right now, or offering me this or offering me that. And really that will be the best way to start that conversation in a way that you feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I'm curious on the flip side of that, Laura, in your perspective, in the years of overseeing people, specifically on the talent side of things, you're super attuned to people. And we all can tell sometimes if someone's showing up a little bit differently, right? Our colleague, a man or woman, you can tell something's going on. What's been your approach if you see someone that may look like they're struggling, but obviously you don't want to cross any lines, but how do you balance seeking out and seeing if they're okay?
I think a lot of it, excuse me, is, a little bit of my own personal experience. We're all talking, this all sounds great if you've identified that person that can be that safe space for you. But I'm not going to lie, there were times in my career where I thought I was seeking out somebody that I could be, emotionally vulnerable with. and they weren't. It wasn't the person. And I learned really quickly that if you open up to the wrong people, and depending on what position they're in, that could be kind of something they hold against you, and you're almost kind of blacklisted for that. So I would like to look at people where if I'm sensing that they're maybe off, never doing something in public in front of a group, always wanting to pull them aside and just say, hey, you've shown up a certain way and I can tell you're a little off today. Is there something that we can do? Again, going back to what Robbie said, what can I do for you? Is there something that you want me to kind of address? Or is this just kind of an off day? And sometimes I'll get, oh gosh, no, I stayed up really late last night and, I'm dragging today, so I'm not my full self. And other times it's people going, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm really struggling. I don't maybe want to tell you about it, but it's a lot today. And I personally think that I've gotten to be so vulnerable in my career because I've had managers that realize, hey, if I want really good work out of Laura, I've got to show up for her. And if I give her that, she's going to make me look good. And so I try to do the same for others. If I can get you to a good place, whether that's sending you home early because today's just not the day. I mean, there have been many times that I've gone up to Jason and just said, I need a mental health day. I'm not calling out because I'm truly sick. I don't want to lie to you. I just have a lot on my plate and I need to step away. And he's going to say, you know what, that sounds like a great idea, because he knows if I come in and I'm not operating at 100%, why am I there, right? You're going to get more out of me if I take this break. So again, just can I offer that to the people that I'm working alongside, that whether I'm training them, whether it's, a colleague coming in that wants to vent, can I offer them something like that? Can I give them that space?
This is my last question. This is for you, Jason. This is interesting because now we're posing this from a one-on-one perspective. But when you head up a team, a department, a division, or a whole company as a CEO, you're holding sometimes the mental health of hundreds of people in your hand. And sometimes things are outside of your control, right, Jason? It could be the economy, certain concerns people are having, all these different things. So when if say historically, if you've been in an organization when morale is off for whatever reason, if say a leader leaves, or there's been a lot of conversation in the news about layoffs and this and that, that's maybe some fear people are experiencing internally or other things. What do you do overall as a leader? Do you communicate more during those times, or what have you done historically?
Yeah, definitely. It's all about communicating. And even at the beginning of this year, 2025, I had to send out our scorecard for our team bonus, and it's on a 1 to 5 scale. And right out of the gate, we were in the low 2s. And so, that affects everyone. And, I had to be a cheerleader. I also told it like it is, right? I said specifically, that's that authenticity, the vulnerability, being honest with people. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at the beginning of the year. And I said, if we all work hard, we can get close to a 5. We can do this. We can get the bonus that we all want as an organization. But I put it out there like, it's going to take hard work. It's going to take us rebounding. We've got to continue to work on capital. I had to explain what capital is to everyone to make sure that everyone knew it. But it was, on our internal intranet, and I posted it out there, and I got lots of good feedback about, we've got this, we've got this. And, I have confidence in my team that we can do anything. We can do absolutely anything. And so even if our numbers are down at the beginning of the year, we can rebound from this. And we're now at like 4.65 out of 5. It's outstanding. And that is a testimony to the team that we built and that culture of being able to provide for our members, or if it was a for-profit customers. But I think you're so on as far as like what you're talking about here, Antonio, about communication. It is all about that. And I think you have to be direct at times. If someone is struggling, you have to ask those questions, and, they may not tell you everything. They might tell you pieces, and it's how do you mitigate and go around that. We've had people that have worked for leaders in our organization that there's not a fit. but now they're thriving because they've been moved to another organization because they reached out and they said, this is not working for me. And I love the organization. I don't want to quit. I want to move forward. And we listened and we moved them under managers that have a different mindset or can work with them in a way that's different. And again, it's being that open, honest communication and listening and hearing what people have to say. And when the time does get tough, I think you'd rather be told like times are tough right now and we need to work together. We need to like pull up our pants, put on our shoes, and we need to go for it, right? And I think it's those kind of things that help out. You know, when you see sports teams, I always look at sports analogies, you know, and I joke with Laura all the time because she's like, yay, sports. But at the same time, it's like there's so much that goes on in sports when the team is down, and you could be in the cellar one year and you get two good players that add to the team, and the next year you're now making the playoffs, right? Because you've got that help. And it's the same thing at an organization. It's like somebody new can come in and revitalize a whole area that has been depressed for a good year or two because of someone that was there that left. And so it's constantly moving things around and trying to figure out, you know, what's the best puzzle piece. And there's a time too where, you know, somebody might not be on the bus. They might not be on the evergreen train, right? Going the same direction. And I think they'll work through it themselves. And if they hang on, they're in for a ride. But if it's not for them, you know, maybe they need to look for something else. And that's just that honest, you know, communication that we have.
Yeah, well, I got to say, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think it's so important and people are going to get so much value out of it. And just a reminder for everyone here, if you need support, please seek it out, ask for help. This is not any type of medical advice, just want to have a real conversation on something we don't talk about enough. So I want to say thank you so much to Robbie Young for joining us, for Laura Briggs for joining us. And we look forward to all of you listeners to joining Jason and I again on on Pilot to Co-Pilot with me, Antonio Neves and Jason Lindstrom. We'll see you guys next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Tony. We'll talk to you guys later.